Just last week, OWI announced in a devlog they were going to be completely overhauling the infantry gameplay. And these last few days, they have been kind enough to let me try out and record some footage to share with you guys. And let me tell you something, these changes are huge. How's it going, guys? My name's Honcho and welcome to the first look at the Infantry Overhaul. So, for those who didn't catch the devlog last week, let's do a very quick recap. OWI stated that they aren't happy with where things have gone. So, in an effort to get back to their original vision of Squad, they are completely overhauling the infantry combat system, from movement, weapon handling, suppression, and optics. Pretty much nothing is going to be left unchanged. Now, what I am about to show you is everything they have changed, but it is in a pretty early stage. Some stuff is more or less complete, whilst others will require feedback and more testing to get where they are happy with it. So keep in mind when watching the footage here, it's all subject to change and very early days. I am going to do my best to talk through the main changes whilst showcasing some gameplay, and at the end of the video, I'll give you some of my honest thoughts. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more squad guides, updates, and gameplay, and check out my squad server, Dead on Dismount. Link is in the description and pinned comment down below. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to get into is movement. OWI stated they were reducing the movement speed in an attempt to slow the game down a little bit and get people to focus on using vehicles and other squads with helicopters or APCs to move them around the map. Now, I was apprehensive with this one at first, but it feels like there's been maybe a 10-15% decrease in movement speed, but it feels great. It seems a bit more realistic. You feel really attached to your character and the inertia is felt a bit more too. And after about 30 minutes or so, you actually don't really notice the change at all. Now, to go with this, leaning has been changed, mainly in an effort to negate the power wiggle, but also to fit within the theme of things. Back in 4.5, the current state of the game, you can spam Q and E to dodge bullets like you're Neo from the Matrix. Now the movement is much slower, and when you are walking or moving, the angle of lean is much narrower, which helps keep things looking a little bit more realistic and a little less like Rainbow Six. Vaulting and fall damage has also been dramatically changed. The height in which you can vault has been lowered by a good, I'd say 12 inches, and vaulting now takes a hefty chunk of your stamina when you pull yourself up. So now if you want to get over those high walls, you need someone to boost you up, like what is shown in the tutorial. You can't, however, parkour around the map like you used to, and mainly, you can't catch yourself mid-drop. Fall damage is now percentage based on your total health, and is much more punishing. Now, I always felt that the old fall damage system was too punishing as it was, but this is just full on Catholic. Jumping off a 7-foot wall can actually kill you, and if you are a tanker and enjoy using NATO vehicles, well, you're probably going to lose about 80% of your health trying to get off the top of your Abrams. But like I said, this is all subject to change, and they want feedback. Moving on from this, suppression also got a complete rework. It's a lot more punishing now, but you really do feel the need to seek out cover and wait for your moment to either counter, move, or peek. You can really see when I'm being shot at here, the different levels of suppression with different visual and audio effects. There really seems to be a big emphasis on using suppression, especially for machine gunners or light vehicles with the likes of a 50 cal, and things like 40mm grenades or 30mm autocannons really pump that suppression over a wider area. The movement changes and suppression changes alone are already enough to turn the game on its head. You have to think about what you're doing more, where you're going and how you are going to do it, all the while trying to actively avoid being shot at. Now, before we move into the gunplay, let's dive into the changes to the optics and the addition of picture-in-picture. Picture-in-picture is essentially rendering the game twice. Your surrounding area stays the same, whilst the optic has magnified where you are looking by whatever magnification the optic is. It really adds to the immersion and is a beautiful feature in many first-person shooter games these days. So it's nice to see Squad getting with the times on this one. Now, there are some bugs to be ironed out and some optimizations to be done to it, but in its first iteration, it's absolutely gorgeous. The colours, the sight picture, and the way the magnifiers work feels really good, until you move around a bit too much and you start getting some weird eye relief issues, and the whole thing just goes black. One thing I will point out is a lot of people will be wanting to drop their sensitivities down considerably now because of the magnification is stronger than the current state of squad. So they do feel a bit zoomy, but luckily we've got a whole bunch of new sliders to change everything on the fly. You also now have this indication on screen that lets you know when you have the most control over your rifle, mainly the sway, so we're all going to have to relearn the timings for when it's good to shoot and when isn't. I was lucky enough to join for a live playtest, and whilst using the M4 with the ACOG, it has really slowed down how fast I can engage the enemy, whilst also making me take care of my shot placements and follow up shots. And everything that has a ranged optic has been changed to this system, including the heavy AT launchers. And those have a real sway penalty and take much longer to get up, get steadied, and get ready to take your shot. However, it can be sped up by either being crouched or prone. Now yes, there are some optimizations to be made here, and I think the anti-aliasing has been messing with it a little bit, but OWI are aware of this and will be working to get on top of that. Once performance on these optics are nailed, it will feel very, very smooth and will take away some of the clunkiness of how things feel right now. Naturally, red dots and iron sights have had changes too, with the main change being that they have a faster ADS time than a ranged optic. Again, stamina has a huge part to play in all of this. If your stamina bar is empty, it's going to take a while to gain full control of your weapon, whereas with a full bar, you will steady it up pretty quickly. It does look like some of the weapon's eye relief needs adjusting, notably the M110 SAS, as you're currently looking down a keyhole, but in the grand scheme of things, this is pretty small. The biggest knock-on effect to all of this though is recoil and weapon handling. OWI is claimed to have made recoil more sophisticated, and they want to make the use of going full auto more situational. For the most part, recoil feels like it has been increased across the board, especially for weapons that use bipods like machine guns and marksman rifles. Now because it's been increased, and with the new scope systems, it can do some pretty funky things. Irons and red dots now feel like the guns have been overgassed, and after a few rounds, you can't see what you're shooting at. And if you go fully auto, the weapon seems to jitter side to side quite uncomfortably. Now some of it probably just needs the weapon gas visual effect toned back a smidge, and others the recoil animation dialed in a bit more. ACOGs and the likes though, everything just goes blurry after just one shot, so it makes follow-up shots that little bit difficult. Not only that, but look just how much this ACOG is moving back. The weapon feels like it's been limp-wristed rather than shouldered with a good firm grip. Flick it to full auto and things just go wild. The gun jitters from side to side, and things like machine guns, you just go blind even when burst firing. So if you get to be more methodic and be slower and take your time, semi-auto works really nicely. Full auto, however, is just a bucking bronco and it's taking you for a ride. Whilst on the topic of full auto, hip fire has been turned into point fire. Now, point fire is supposed to be your weapon shouldered in, but you aren't aiming down your sights. Games like Escape from Tarkov used to simulate this beautifully. Squad's first iteration at this makes you feel more like a toddler holding onto a hosepipe that's on full pressure and the pipe is just flapping around everywhere. It's just a mixture of things like the new recoil systems, weapon sway, and other bits have landed into a very dramatic change in weapon handling. Like I said though, it's all subject to change, and I'm sure it all just needs dialing in more. All in all, OWI has delivered in their promise to completely overhaul it all, and to me, it's about 80% there. Some aspects feel more finished than others. For example, the new movement changes, you could drop that into squad tomorrow and it will be fantastic. The weapon handling is probably what's going to need the most work, especially point firing. They wanted to add more depth and make it more satisfying to use, but realistically, you don't want to go losing that intuitiveness of how the gunplay is in its current state. Now when I say it needs the most work, I'm not saying, oh, this is absolutely broken. It's not. It just needs to be dialed in and fine-tuned. Scale back some of the effects, make it feel like we are actually holding on to the rifles. I'm not asking for no recoil. I like that we have to control it. It adds a level of skill. And I also like the fact that we have to be more methodical. But the devs really need to pay attention to the finer details and really fine-tune this, because it is the very core of Squad. And if people don't enjoy it, they won't play it. After all, it is a game, and realism doesn't always make for fun gameplay. But some of the weapon handling just isn't realistic. I'm cautiously optimistic that in time, this will get nailed. I just hope they don't try and rush this out half-cooked like the OWI of old. It feels very clunky when you use it on your own in the likes of Jensen's range, but when you use it in a live game on a bigger map, you can truly see the vision and what OWI are aiming for, and that is a huge glimmer of hope in itself. 2022 and so far in 2023 has been a huge, strong list of Ws from OWI, and Squad has grown massively because of this. I am going to round off on one thing though. I don't get why people are so obsessed with Squad being more like Project Reality, because at the end of the day, Squad isn't Project Reality. Squad has over 10,000 active daily users. Project Reality has a few hundred. If Project Reality was really that good, wouldn't more people still be playing that instead of Squad? Squad may have deviated from its original planned development route, but in doing so, it found its own identity, and a unique one at that, which has attracted players from a broad variety of backgrounds. If they get this right and take on everyone's feedback accordingly, take the time, play test multiple changes, this will be absolutely huge. If they rush it out half cooked, well, it'll piss off a lot of people. And you just have to look at recent events with the likes of War Thunder and Hell Let Loose to see what a scorned player base will and can do. Anyway, that's it for today's video. I'll be sure to keep you all informed with the upcoming changes on this as and when they come. We'll all have a lot to learn when this drops, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. What are your thoughts so far? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching, take care, and I will catch you in the next video or in my server.